Hypothesis testing leads to inferential statistics. Inferential statistics may be parametric and non-parametric. Today we are going to deal with parametric statistics. In parametric statistics, the most widely used statistic is the t-test, where most of the medical, biological, nutrition researchers use this t-test very frequently. It has been invented by William Gosset, and the pseudonym for this is student. That's why it is called a student t-test. So today we discuss about various t-tests, how, where and when it can be used for inferring your data. By the end of this module, you will be in a position to learn about how to test a hypothesis, how to have a hypothesis, how to have a null hypothesis, how to have an alternative hypothesis, what are the different type of errors you will encounter while testing the hypothesis, and also what are the different significant levels to test the hypothesis. What is a hypothesis testing? Generally, we use a random sample to learn something about a large population. What are the common decision problems we encounter? For example, a researcher is interested in testing whether a specific pre-surgical preparation product will show greater antimicrobial efficacy than a control product, or a sociologist suggests that certain environmental changes will reduce the crime rate in a community, or an agronomist predicts greater yield per acre if farmers use a new hybrid seed. A nutritionist is interested in proving diet A significantly reduces to weight gain in women than diet B. So, what is a hypothesis? Hypothesis is a belief or a claim concerning a parameter. A parameter may be population mean, proportion, correlation, regression coefficient, or etc. So, to prove whether these parameters are significantly different or not, we use the test of hypothesis. So, what are the different procedures that have been adopted in testing the hypothesis? Initially, as a first step, you have to set up a hypothesis, that is your original hypothesis. The first thing in hypothesis testing is to set up a hypothesis about a population parameter. Then we collect sample data, produce sample statistics, and use this information to decide how likely it is that our hypothesized population parameter is correct. After that, for testing a hypothesis, you should have a null hypothesis, where we start with there is no difference between the experiment and control. For example, the hypothesis asserts that there is no real difference in the sample and the population in the particular matter under consideration, and that the difference found is accidental and unimportant, acting out of fluctuations of sampling. The notation generally used for null hypothesis, the symbol is H subscript 0. And the third one is alternative hypothesis. If null hypothesis found false, what alternative would be true? The alternative hypothesis directed by H subscript 1 is the opposite of H0, that must be true when H0 is false. Therefore, in procedure of testing of hypothesis, you will encounter two types of problems. One is type 1 error. Type 1 error is nothing but is the mistake of rejecting the null hypothesis when it is true. The symbol alpha is used to represent the probability of type 1 error. Type 1 error is nothing but a false positive cases. In general, universally accepted phenomena, we cannot accept not more than 5% of this type. Type 2 error is the mistake of failing to reject the null hypothesis when it is false. The symbol used for this is beta and represented as a type 2 error, which is nothing but false negatives. These we can accept till 20%. Therefore, the goal is keep the type 1 error alpha and type 2 error beta reasonably small. For example, if you see the screen, type 1 and type 2 errors as an example, we have a table in that statistical decision is 1 and status of null hypothesis. When the statistical decision is reject the null hypothesis, that means that conclude that the intervention works, and if at all the null hypothesis is true, that means that intervention does not work, that will yield you the type 1 error alpha. That means that 5% or less than 5% of the cases are not following the population or by chance. The second one, if the null hypothesis is false, that means that intervention works, because null hypothesis we always start with there is no difference. When it is false, that means that there is a difference. That there is a difference means the intervention works. If at all that is so, when the statistical decision is to reject the null hypothesis, then H0 is false or intervention works will become correct. The second one is do not reject the null hypothesis. That means that no insufficient evidence that the intervention works. That means that you should not reject the null hypothesis means both the groups are same. That means that H0 is true, which is correct. Then H0 is false, intervention works. That means that this is a type 2 error which we represent as beta. So if you see the table, when you reject the null hypothesis, if null hypothesis is true as far as the status of null hypothesis is concerned, then that is called a type 1 error. If it is false as far as the status of null hypothesis is concerned, then we say it is a correct. When you don't reject the null hypothesis, if at all the status of null hypothesis is true, we say it is correct. If at all if status of null hypothesis is false, we say it is type 2 error. So by virtue of seeing the table, you will understand what is the true and what is the false. If at all the null hypothesis is true, then P is less than 0.05 people call, which are basically called as a false positives. By virtue of doing this, you will encounter a one tail and two tail test. What is this one tail and two tail test? You also please see the table. So what is a two tail test? In the two tail test, alpha or the type 1 error is equally divided at the ends of the two tails. You can see the middle graph where the equally divided to in the ends of the distribution. It is generally recommended because difference in any direction are usually important to report. For example, it is obviously important to know if a new intervention is significantly better than the standard or placebo. Also, it is important to know if new intervention is significantly worse and should be avoided. In this situation, a two-tail test is very much ideal. Sometimes, however, only a one-tail test is needed. For example, that a new treatment known to cost more than the currently used therapy, it would not be used if it were worse than the current therapy. But it would also not use it if it were merely as good as the current therapy. Therefore, it should not be worse, it should not be as good as the current therapy. For one tail, the non-rejection region extends to 1.645 standard errors of the mean, and for the two tail, it extends to 1.96 standard errors of the mean. So what does it mean? That means that if at all you are using a two tail test, even for calculating the sample size, as the denominator increases, the sample size is more than one tail test. So if you see the figure, there are four figures in that. The first figure, if you see, in the balance, both the weights, maybe control and experimental, are the same. After you give the intervention in the second one, which we call as a collect evidence, we say, after you giving the intervention, there is a tilt happened in the balance. One is increasing, one is remain same or decreasing. Then that we call as a significance level. After that has happened, we give a decision rule saying that the intervention works or intervention doesn't work. Therefore, there are different steps involved in testing the hypothesis. What are they? In step 1, formulate the test hypothesis, which we called H subscript A or H1, both are same first. And then the null hypothesis H0, which will be the opposite of the test hypothesis, H alternative hypothesis. These serve as the two mutually exclusive alternatives being considered. In the step 2, select the sample size and set the type 1 error or alpha level. The probability of type 1 error, you have to set it. In the step 3, select the appropriate test statistic to be used. In the step 4, formulate the decision rule, that is, decide what the test statistic must show in order to support or reject the null hypothesis, H0. In the step 5, collect the sample data, conduct the experiment and perform the statistical test calculations. In the step 6, apply the decision rule to the null hypothesis, H0, in terms of accepting or rejecting it at the specified value. And the significance level, in general we call it as, when we reject the null hypothesis, there is a risk of drawing a wrong conclusion. Risk of drawing a wrong conclusion, called p-values or observed significance level, can be calculated. A researcher decides the maximum risk, called significance level, he is already to take. Usually significance level is 5%. That means that if you repeat the experiment 100 times under ideal circumstances, 95 times you get the same answer what you are getting, 5 times you may miss, that is called significance level, which we call as a p is less than 0.05. As far as the p-value is concerned, we start from the basic assumption the null hypothesis is true. That means the null hypothesis says that there is no difference between intervention and control, or drug or placebo. And the p-value is the probability of getting a value equal to or more extreme than the sample result, given that the null hypothesis is true. Decision rule: if p-value is less than 5%, then reject the null hypothesis. If p-value is 5% or more, then the null hypothesis remains valid. That means that we start with there is no difference between the two groups. If the p-value is less than 5%, then we reject the null hypothesis. What does it mean? If at all your p-value is 5% or more, then the null hypothesis remains valid. In any case, you must give the p-value as a justification for your decision. So, how do you test the hypothesis? To which value you compare? There are table values basically. The table values are not done on the basis of any experiment, but hypothetically mathematically created table values. The value which you get by virtue of any statistical test is compared with the table value, and if this value is more than that value, we reject the null hypothesis. If at all we are rejecting the null hypothesis, at what level we are rejecting the null hypothesis, you can see in the table, and generally acceptable is 5%. That means that p is less than 0.05. If you want to see the critical region how it would look like, generally the p is less than 0.05 means the probability of error or rejecting the null hypothesis is 5%. So at the extremes the values are 2.5% and 2.5%, and the confidence level or the amount of correctness is 95%, which is shown by virtue of drawing the lines, and the red lines indicate that the probability of the error where 2.5% that side and 2.5% this side, and the critical values of 95% confidence interval is always the area under curve is 1.96. Then every time we have to discuss whether statistical significance is always a medical significance. Therefore, it is up to the subject expert or the scientist who is dealing that whether that significance really to do with that or not. Historically, the phrase statistical significance has been used in a technical sense to mean that it is likely that a change in a variable is due to an experimental intervention or comes about because the subjects are not part of the certain population. This technical use of the word significant is often confused with the ordinary usage of the word when it refers to an outcome that is not noteworthy to the subject. For example, a reduction in diastolic blood pressure in an experiment of 5 points may be statistically significant, but it is probably not medically significant, for it is unlikely to affect the subject's health. Then coming to that, what is statistics basically? The statistics is a science of collecting, organizing, presenting, analyzing numerical data for the purpose of assisting in making a more effective decisions. When we use for biological sciences, it will become biostatistics. The purpose of this is how to start with. We start with a hypothesis which was taught in the earlier class, and we design the study, we analyze the data, and we interpret the results. And you also should know what are the different types of data you will encounter in analysis of the statistics. For example, basically we have 4 types of measurements of data. One is nominal data, which is characterized by the data that consists of names, labels or categories. The data cannot be arranged in an ordinary ordering scheme such as low high. For that, the example is, for example, if you are going for a survey and you happens to see a male, you code it as 1, and female you code it as 2. Ordinal data involves data that may be arranged in some order, but differences between data values either cannot be determined or meaninglessly. For example, rating of the cancer stage 1, 2, 3, it has got some order. Interval data, like the ordinal level with the additional property that the differences between any 2 data values is meaningful. However, there is no natural zero starting point where none of the quantity is present. For example, years 1000, 2000, 1776, 1490 like that. Ratio level data, the interval level modified to include the natural zero starting point, and you have all the arithmetic parameters you can use here, plus, minus, into, division, exponentiation, all the arithmetic operators can be used here. Basically, the example for this kind of data is most of the data we use in general, 95% of the data is ratio level data, your age, your weight, your height, your hemoglobin, creatinine, income, expenditure. So, these are the different types of variables where most of the ratio level data you can use. So, inferential statistics are parametric and non-parametric. What is a parametric test? A statistical test which concerns population parameters and requires assumptions about these parameters. Some of the parameters are t-test, ANOVA, correlation, and regression, etc. Whereas, the non-parametric tests often used in place of their parametric counterparts when certain assumptions about the underlying population are not met. So, each parametric test has its assumptions, and that assumptions to be followed to use parametric test. So, what are the assumptions for each parametric test will come in subsequent slides. Non-parametric tests may be and often are more powerful in detecting population differences when certain assumptions are not satisfied. Also, these tests are called distribution free tests. So, if at all the assumptions are satisfied of the parametric test, then parametric tests are more robust when compared to non-parametric tests. I summarize this session. Today we have learned about what are the different methods to test the hypothesis, what are the different types of hypotheses available, and how to test the hypothesis, what are the different types of errors that would encounter while testing the hypothesis, and also using this hypothesis how inferential statistics can be applied. For example, in the t-test, how do you test the hypothesis using hypothesis testing methods, and also we learned about what are the parametric and what are non-parametric. Also, what are the different types of t-tests that have been used in our day-to-day research, especially the biologists, the nutritionists and the medical personnel, where most frequently the t-test is being used. That is what we learned today, and if at all you know and understand these three tests, you can apply this t-test invariably into your research and get better results.